Let's unravel Geeta's world. Welcome to the 115th episode of Geeta's World. We are recording on the last day of the year 2024. Welcome, Geeta. How are you?
How are you, Anna? How has the year been? Because unfortunately, I keep saying this. We'll really miss you. It was a fabulous 2024 doing the podcast with you, and you will certainly be missed. Also, your lovely voice, which I keep talking about. But it's been
husky
a
voice.
very great. It's been a not great, but eventful year. A lot happened, good,
Dramatic
bad,
global shifts that
rather
we've seen.
worse. But a lot has happened, and we should be discussing that. But hoping that 2025 will bring in some semblance of peace, sanity, normalcy,
Yeah.
humanity back
Yeah.
into the world order.
Right. That's how we are hoping to end this year with that note. But yes, like you said, unfortunately, I mean, I don't want to be like really emotional, but yes, deep down, it feels that hosting like 115 episodes, 114 episodes, it was a treat to me.
Fantastic. It was
And-
just fantastic. I made her wait sometimes quite a lot.
But today,
Sometimes she used to push, saying, "Are you coming? Is this when we're recording?" So on and so forth. So, but you've been very patient.
no, but like I give you that benefit of doubt because, we are a podcast team, but Geeta is like primarily her work is for TV. And TV is like, is just there in the moment you have to be on camera, give bites, 2 minute bites.
So the
3
moment
minutes
she
bites.
says,
So,
"Okay, so we're recording and it's all scheduled," something breaks, and I'm like, "Oh, I have to go live. I'll come after the live." So, but she managed it well. Thank you so much. And wishing you a happy new year, also our viewers and our listeners. It was great having you as part of our. Of my world, so to say, Geeta's world. It's been a lovely ride, and we hope to continue it. And you will surely be watching Anna soon enough.
Yeah.
Soon enough.
Yeah.
Maybe not in this network, but soon enough.
soon enough, yes. So yeah, just a disclaimer that Geeta's World will have a different host. So from the new year, a new beginning. So kudos to that. But still bring in your feedback, keep pouring in the love that you have been giving to me and Geeta both. So do that, keep that coming in, keep in your comments coming in, your feedback matters. So let us know what you'll be anticipating for Geeta's World to sort of unfold in the coming year. And a very happy new year to everyone. So on that note, since we are winding this year down, like you mentioned, we saw like a very dramatic global shifts. Considering we'll be focusing on the international events that have actually shaped the geopolitical discourse. We had wars, crisis, leaderships changing, because this was a super year of elections, right?
Yes,
Over almost
absolutely.
60 countries went for elections this year.
80, about 80 nations.
About 80
Yeah,
nations,
about
right?
80 nations.
Including India, yes. But here, of course, we saw Narendra Modi coming back to power, Modi 3.0. But that was a humble victory. It's a
Yes.
coalition power, coalition government that is in power. But anyway, so we'll be focusing on like 4 to 5 major events. And considering we have also discussed that at length, episodic in an episodic way in our podcast. So that will give us like a flashpoint to understand it more in a sense that what exactly happened, how we are leaving that event in 2024, and how that is going to shape 2025, the geopolitical discourse, how that is going to be shaped. So let's begin by addressing the super year of elections, because there's a trend that we saw this year. Like for example, there's a global wave of discontented or like disgruntled voters, um, voting against the incumbent governments, be it left or right. We saw, like, for example, if you see the UK or South
Yeah, a
Africa,
surprise shift. We've
a
seen
surprise
that.
shift, right? And there would be,
Depending on whichever the government is,
yes,
they've just shifted base. They've just
yes,
voted against.
voted against. And that's what I was meaning to ask you, that yes, there would be various reasons for particular countries, individual countries, and the primarily being economic struggles, like inflation, because we just are coming from that COVID era, pandemic era.
Despite the fact that no matter which government would have been there, they would have been facing quite a bit of hardship and economic troubles. The fact that there was a left or a right government and got toppled was because they were there at that moment.
Right.
Interestingly, in Europe, we've seen a far right swing, wave. But look at UK.
It's
They
the
voted the
left.
conservatives out.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what, like, it's a year of reckoning, to be, to sum it up. They wanted, the voters demanded change. So, like, for example, if you see, of course, inflation is one factor, but then there is also governance failures. There's also rising polarization. There's also anti-immigrant sentiment, like that drove movements in the US or Europe. So, if you look back and you see a particular trend that, like, do you see this trend demanding, signaling a demand for genuine systemic change, or they are just simply like a cyclical, rejection for status quo? How do you interpret?
This time, I don't think it's been cyclical, which is why there have been surprises, and there is. I don't think it's a need for systemic change. It's a demand. Do I consider their anti-immigration policies a need for change or a demand?
Right.
So I don't consider it a need. I do think the policies in some countries are a little flawed. That they should be more. They should have stronger policies, and illegal immigration is a problem. But mixing illegal immigration with immigration and saying that there is a need for systemic change, I wouldn't agree with. But is there a demand? Yes, there is a demand.
Yeah, there's a
And that growing demand. So you in the West, there are a few major issues which rode most of the elections, and they are immigration in most of the countries. In many countries, immigration was a major issue.
yeah,
Economy, the downturn of the economy, and a rise in inflation, and both of them connected to, if the countries involved, the wars, and whether if they should be supporting the war or not,
right.
at whose cost. So all these interconnected subjects which have led to people losing purchasing power, people losing their standard of living, is primarily one of the bases why we've seen a change. But there's also been this is a purely economic, but also has a social undercurrent and an underlayer, which is that when you're looking at these economic issues, you also have to understand that that also has led to, or vice versa, in a way, an entire community othering the other community,
Okay, yeah.
or othering immigrants, saying, we don't want them, we don't need them. So, yeah, there was a clear demand. Othering the culture itself, saying that this is not what we are all about, right? Whether it's in America, where you saw during campaigning by Trump, absolute extreme vitriol, right,
yeah.
against communities.
Yeah.
And it was acceptable because those who are against immigration might not agree with the language or with his position or stance or statements on with regards to one particular community, but they certainly were not okay with immigrants coming and taking their jobs.
Yeah.
And no matter
There.
what Kamala Harris said, that this is not us, this is not America, Trump is not America,
America, yeah.
that value system is not America. like we discussed earlier.
Yeah,
Well,
I
people just vote.
remember. I remember you said Trump is America, America is Trump.
Yeah, so
So
I
that's
mean, they just proved it,
mm,
right?
mm.
And similarly, the same trends is what you're seeing. It's different in South America, where we've
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
a rise in left wing politics, but also right coming or uh, centrist
Centrist, yes.
governments also coming to
Right,
power.
right.
But their reasons why they're in power, why, you know, why did De Silva, Luiz Inácio Lula de Silva,
Mm.
return to power in Brazil?
Brazil. Mm.
The reasons are different.
Of
You're
course.
seeing left rise, you're seeing the centrists come, you're seeing some maybe a little towards the right also come, but it's not like the reasons that we see in Europe and in the
Mm.
United States of America.
Right, yeah. Only time.
Also, Canada. Canada will see a shift too.
Yeah,
France is seeing
2025.
a massive shift.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Germany too.
Germany
We have
too.
discussed that
Yeah.
because the coalition has fallen,
Yes.
and
Yes.
most probably the far right is going to
All of them.
all of them.
They're all in trouble.
Yeah.
And the reasons remain the same
Yeah.
across Europe.
Yes. So only time will tell that whether these new leaders are going to deliver on the electoral promises that on the basis of which they are gaining power or have gained power. So yeah, talking about elections, we can't just not mention the U.S. elections because that was just you were also there to cover it. So yes, we'll be talking about from India's perspective because there's a lot to talk about. We have done an episode, there's a lot to talk about. But here, considering India-US relations have been just we have been talking about it again and again. So let's just understand that what his victory is going to mean for India, because there's like a recent interview to the Hindu. Former US Ambassador to India, Kenneth Juster, he said that he believes India can expect raised tariffs and renewed pressure to finalize a free trade agreement with the US. And we know that Trump has, strongly advocated for a strong US-India relationship, and his cabinet nominees also we have seen have been strongly, pro-India. But like there's a dent as well because we have seen how his quotes have been. He sees India as a major quote unquote abuser of the trading system. He has pushed for a 20% tariff on all imported goods. Some economists also predict that India's GDP could shrink by 0.1% by 2028 if these tariffs are imposed. And he has also restricted H-1B work visas impacting Indian immigrants. Recently also threatened the BRICS nation with 100% tariffs, although he has kept India, he has excluded India for now. But yeah, considering, all these, if he enacts these harsh tariffs or immigration restrictions that he is claiming now, it is going to be a major, challenge for India to, navigate this. So what is going to be India's response, how it's going to tackle it, maintaining the relations that we
See,
have?
for now, I think India is playing it by ear. He's going to be the president. Dr. Jaishankar was in the United States of America. He engaged the current administration, but also the one that's going to take over. And there is clarity in one thing, that they need India as much as India needs them.
Right.
Trump 2.0 is not going to take decisions that are going to be absolutely detrimental to the ties. Because if he wants to counter China, and if he's looking to, solve major world problems, then you need to have India on your side. Right now, there is only one country that's talking to maybe all sides at any given point in time, and that is India.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be more pragmatic. It's easier to make all the noise and talk and be loud about these things. But when it comes to real decision making, I think they're going to be a little more sensible and careful. Although, yes, on trade and tariff, he is going to be tough on India. He was tough on India even in his first term. when they thought that, there's so much to gain out of India. Why should he stall the trade talks? But he did. For about 80 Harley Davidsons that are actually sold in India, not more. He did, because he was not okay with the tariffs that India levies. So the tariff war will continue and might even get exacerbated. But if you're looking at the long-lasting impact of relations, then I suppose India is going to be important. Look at the recent H-1B visa row, and the Laura Loomer versus Elon Musk, and MAGA versus MAGA. You're seeing Republicans implode. There is going to be some sort of implosion. There is a lot of racism that you're seeing within the Republican Party, and it's all coming out. But what did Trump do? He actually came out in full support of what Elon Musk was saying, that Indian Americans who've studied, done well, are high-tech assets for the United States of America, should be able to stay there, contribute. They've done well for the country. He's always made a distinction and differentiation. There was a speech that he delivered some time ago where he did speak about this, and he said that, well, even those, forget about H-1B visas, he in fact went on to propose that even those students who are in their Ivy League universities, Harvard, so on and so forth, should be retained with green cards. They should be guaranteed green cards. Rather than getting the riffraffs from every country. And I'm not saying people who are going from India, who studied in India, are riffraffs, but I'm just saying that how he thinks. So according to Donald Trump, getting any other, of these workers from any other place, just retain the ones you have educated and allow the ones who you think are important and can contribute. So he's actually sided with Elon Musk. So we'll have to wait and see how this really pans out. I don't think, the next 4 years are going to be quite interesting because he has a 4-year term. Prime Minister Modi is going to be here for the next 4 years.
4 years,
So the administrations, I think, will be more pragmatic.
But there has been have been few episodes like the Pandan case, which I have discussed.
That's going to be interesting because they have Harmeet Dhillon in there. He's now has her in his government, and she's the civil rights officer, and she really was harsh and hard on India on the Panun case. And if she advises saying that India was indeed involved and that's unacceptable, how can they come and kill people in a targeted manner, then I suppose the Indian side. This is one area where, Anna, I think I will wait and see how it pans out.
Right.
Because for Trump, America is paramount. Americans are paramount. If somebody, now, Indian Americans, whether they are paramount or not, whether they're important or not, we'll have to wait and see, depending on this case. Now, if somebody tells Trump, and he does think that America is supreme and that he is the most powerful person in the world, being president of America. So when he becomes president of the United States of America, and he's told that there is this country, India, that according to their intelligence reports has, sent or was involved in murder for hire and assassination plots, drawing up assassination plots, so on and so forth, breaching their soil and carrying out operations on American soil. I don't know whether there will be acceptability there. Like, what's the negotiating term over here? We'll give a name, right? A junior officer's name. Will that be enough or not? India is very clear that India has done no such thing. Will it be believed by Trump or not? Because for him, it's all about who has convinced him or who is going to convince him. The advantage, again, that there is Tulsi Gabbard is going to be Director, National Intelligence.
Right.
Massive post. We'll have to wait and see what she gets in terms of the intelligence that US gathered against India,
Yeah.
or the FBI for that matter, Kash Patel.
Yes.
What is going to happen there. So we'll have to wait. And this is one case where I am waiting to see what really happens, because most of them were highly critical of Canada and
Right.
Justin Trudeau
That's what.
and how Justin Trudeau handled things. So for India, these are going to be massive markers, but
Actually.
not ones that can turn the tide of growing India-US relations.
Yeah.
With Canada, it's different. It will turn the tide for the better should there be a change in government there.
Yeah. Which in all possibility would
Should
be.
there be, because now the opposition leader also, once the Royal Mount, the RCMP has come out and said that yes, they do see that there's credible proof according to them.
Yeah.
Now the opposition leader is also staying away from India and not criticizing Trudeau on the India factor, because you can do it with a political party.
Right.
He's going to come to power. He's quite confident of that. Once he comes to power, is he going to question RCMP? And if you're questioning your own police agency, then what's left of it, right? So he does not want to question the police agency. He wants to just question the political party. So he's continuing doing that. Now, because RCMP has come out and said that there's credible proof, he's now pulled away from questioning the investigations and siding with India. In fact, he even cancelled the Diwali party he was going to host in Parliament.
Really?
Yeah. So the readings, I just want to see how this really pans out for India in 2025 after Trump takes over.
Right. So moving to the how 2024 has been like a very divisive year, marked by conflicts both within and across borders. We're talking about the Israel, but yes, the war has actually raged across three continents. While Gaza and Lebanon and Ukraine, they have dominated headlines. The famine and the fighting that we saw in Sudan, it drew little, global attention. It was kind of like a muted spectacle that it garnered, although we did do 2 or 3 episodes on that. But yeah, so talking about the Middle East, it has faced immense suffering this year. Like if we talk about in
Gaza.
numbers, right? Yes, Gaza. In Gaza, the 14-month conflict has claimed over 45,300 Palestinian lives, with more than 1.6 million displaced into makeshift shelters. And we have seen, like, we knew the timeline, how the ground invasion in Gaza, then fighting continued in the south, then alongside, airstrikes happened in Iran. The Israel-Gaza conflict has now widened to involve like confrontations with Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, and then Syria also happened. We saw Assad being ousted by rebel forces. And yes, that has displaced 880,000 people in just weeks. Lebanon too grapples with nearly 1 million displaced. So now what I have read, that experts, they predict that these entrenched political elites and external interventions and sectarian divides, it will keep the Middle East volatile, like extremely volatile in 2025. And there's no question, of peace emerging in that area. So we know that US, Donald Trump is in power, and the foreign aid will continue to Israel. And Trump has said that he's going to put an end to the wars. So tell me, what is your reading about it? Because you have told how Israel is going to be like the regional power. It is actually a regional power right now. 2025,
I don't think it's going to be regional power, but I think it is powerful enough because it does have America's support. And while the Biden administration tried to really balance things out, looking at the humanitarian situation, Trump is going to do no such thing. He has already declared war against Hamas and has said that anybody who supports these people or speaks against Israel is they would consider anti-Semite. And does not deserve to be in America. And he's very clearly gone ahead and endorsed Netanyahu. But in all this, he's also said one thing, that I will bring peace.
Yeah.
So if peace negotiations don't work out, then he's going to support Israel, and it's going to be all the way Israel. But should he not want to fund the war?
Right.
Because everything is about money, right?
Yeah.
Then he's going to look at how to get them to negotiate and ensure. He was the one who recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Yeah.
And that was a huge shift in foreign policy, in US's Israel-Palestine policy too. But that happened. So he's very clear. And you'll either see absolute decimation of West Bank, Gaza, with Israel standing strong, or you'll see some sort of a negotiation. Either way, he would not want to continue funding the war. Similarly, in Ukraine, he's not wanting to fund the war. You will see
With the
NATO
NATO.
having to take, Europe having to take a more important active role with more spending in Europe than you'd see America. They will reduce spending. If they move out of NATO, they will be losing leverage. So I don't think he would move. He'll threaten to, but if he moves out, he loses leverage completely.
Of course, yeah.
So I don't think he's completely going, but he is going to reduce spending.
That's how
Defense
it's going
spending,
to.
and which will impact Ukraine.
Okay. But
It already has, because you've seen Biden in desperation, pass all the, make all the moves to get them to use long-range missiles, got them their multi-billion-dollar package, all of that. But when Trump comes, there could be massive delays, and those delays would lead to Trump, to Putin actually gaining ground. So they will again over here, he will say, he will push them to come to the negotiating table, and they will have to come to the negotiating table. But like one of the diplomats I was speaking with, European diplomat, said that the more the delay, the more land Ukraine is going to lose now. So they do recognize and acknowledge the fact that the delays would cause Ukraine to lose more land, because Putin is going to negotiate all the way till Dnieper River. And if that becomes the national boundary, there's a massive chunk, just about a third of Ukraine that will be lost.
Right. And what about the two-state solution that
On Israel and
on Israel-Hamas? Because that
I don't think Trump. So the policy still stands of two-state solution, but all that has to be on the negotiating table. Hostages, he said, will have to be released before Jan 20th, else there is hell to pay. So I don't see a two-state. And two-state solution now does not work for Israel. They've taken so much land.
Right.
The moment you go to two-state solution, Israel will actually have to give up a lot of the land that they have taken, occupied.
Exactly. No, why would it?
So two-state solution is not on Israel's agenda. And if it's not on Israel's agenda, it certainly would not be on Trump's agenda.
Right. But it's like quite surprising that, when the Hamas attack happened, at least people were like, oh, at least people are talking about the two-state solution. At least that is coming to the fore.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
At least they're talking about the situation in Gaza. We did not even know that this was happening.
Yeah, but
because it was so not anybody's
right,
problem.
But that's not how it's going to end, right? I mean, it doesn't look like that. So it's just
let Trump come. They will have to release hostages before, else there's going to be a massive. This is one place where Trump is not speaking peace alone. He's saying that you'll have hell to pay. Everywhere else, he's saying, I'm getting out of the war, not my war to fight. But Israel is top on their agenda of allies they need to keep, especially to have a foothold in the West Asian region.
Right. This was not an election gimmick for Trump. just to say that
No, 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 no. Not Israel.
it's
His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, led the entire thing on normalization of ties between Israel and the Arab world. So the Abraham Accords happened, and he was one of the key. He was instrumental in getting those Abraham Accords through.
right.
I don't think it is not just.
Yeah, I mean,
There's absolute clarity that it is not just for winning elections, or it was not an electoral gimmick
yeah.
at all.
Also, he has like an
This is a
example,
policy decision.
like how he did with Afghanistan pulling out of.
That was a
The
policy decision too.
that was a policy
He
decision.
had said very clearly. In fact, he announced it. The one who pulled out was Biden.
Biden, yeah,
He
but it
could
was
have
his
overturned the
announcement.
decision, but he knew. Biden knew that Trump, after announcing that decision to pull out, Biden would have had to face the wrath of families back home should he have not pulled out.
Yeah,
Because nobody wanted body bags home. They all wanted their boys to come home.
true. Yeah,
So Biden had to take that decision of troop withdrawal, which he could have overturned because it was a Trump era decision.
yes,
And there also Trump criticizes him
yeah.
because Trump says the way it
The
was
way.
done was horrible.
Horrible. Yes.
That you lost men. They did.
Yes,
There was a
yes.
bomb blast.
Yes.
You lost men, and the way you left all the weapons and the systems and everything. So it was done in a very shoddy manner.
Right, yeah. So when we entered this year, 2024, we actually entered with a bang, the G20 summit, the legacy that we were carrying, the kind of spectacle it made. So, that was there. That was the layering, the base of it. But eventually, as we progressed, we saw, like in the immediate neighborhood, we saw our countries imploding wouldn't be a good word, but like in terms of how India's dynamics and the relations that we share, starting with the Maldives boycott and then the change in
Tectonic
power.
shifts
Right.
in governments across our neighborhood.
Exactly. You talk about Myanmar, you talk about Nepal, Sri Lanka,
The Maldives.
the Maldives. Oh, interestingly, there's this report by the Washington Post. Did you
Yes.
read that? So it says that
Jerishi and Siddharth.
yeah, it says that it found something like quite startling.
But they
saying-
also said that there was no proof, and that
There's
the
no
Indian
proof,
side
but
said we don't want to pay.
okay,
Yeah, the report says that very clearly. It says
Yeah.
that basically what happened was the opposition wanted to pay off certain MPs to get Muizu impeached.
okay,
Now, they tried to collect the money. They could not because the Indian side said we are not interested in impeachment and overthrowing of Muizu. Did they engage the opposition? Yes. That's what the report suggests. So, yes, in terms of having conversation, according to Washington Post, the Indian side and the Indian mission was involved in all of that.
Yeah, the raw
But they didn't
spice.
end up like really being involved in any process to impeach Muizu.
Okay, yeah. So
But the stakes are very high. Stakes are very high for India. India will engage the opposition parties. They should be engaging the opposition parties as they should the incumbent, whether it's Bangladesh,
Bangladesh,
the
yeah.
Maldives, Bhutan. Bhutan is pro-India. Nepal,
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka, all of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
But yeah, that I think, of course,
Myanmar.
it will be. Yeah. But in terms of if you assess India's global standing from, say, what we had in 2023, and now here, this year, 2024, you think there is kind of a change that we saw?
See, I'll tell you what in terms of global standing, and it's very interesting
Yeah.
that you ask me that. Politics of countries are impacted by bigger powers around. In this case, in South Asia, it's India and China. You will always see most countries have governments that are either pro-India or pro-China or have leanings towards one side or the other. Anura Dissanayake, the Sri Lankan president, the current president, also there was a view that he was China leaning and that he is going to diss India completely. The Maldivian president outrightly did it. His
Yeah.
entire campaign was India out.
India out campaign, yeah.
Bangladesh, BNP hates us, right? And there's an interim government.
Right.
I'm just taking these three examples for now.
Okay.
Every other country also is going through turmoil, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Myanmar, Afghanistan, but near neighbors and neighbors. Okay,
Yeah.
so just take these countries for example. All of them, in a way, were pro-China. But there is, so the global standing comes over here that we know that we have lost ground in most of these countries. But what next? What next is when you see countries like the Maldives, where the president makes a visit to India, seeks help, there's announcement of cooperation, there are major announcements that are made, and then we are their guarantors, especially in Sri Lanka, against any loans they take at in the IMF, not China.
Not
Who's coming to their rescue? Who's come to the rescue of the Maldives or Sri Lanka? In fact, China did not come to Sri Lanka's rescue, is why the Rajapakses suddenly saw such massive, outrage against them once the economy almost collapsed.
Yeah.
Now you have Anura Dissanayake who came, and he had also come saying that, we'll cancel this, we'll cancel it. But he came here and he pledged commitment to the port project.
Right.
That's India standing right now in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Whether they like it or not, India gets into projects from the development prism rather than from loans and interests, which is what the debt trap that they talk about, the Chinese debt trap, is all about. And that's India standing right now in the neighborhood. Are all countries okay with India? No. Are they liked? No. Yes, the Maldivians had a problem. They said whether if there were soldiers or not, but that was the narrative that was built. And in that narrative, people were hating India, which means that these are things that the Maldivians would not like. Soldiers being on their soil, so on and so forth. So, the technical team who were there had to leave
Yeah.
because they were from the forces, but they were not there in combat positions. They were there to help run the aircraft and the helicopter that was gifted to the Maldives. But they had to leave, and now, even now, it's India's staff that is running those, flying those plane and aircraft and helicopter, but they're just from the civilian areas and not from the forces.
Yeah. Right. Let's also address the China factor because this year we saw the Indian and Chinese armies disengaging the LAC at the LAC, which was, of course, like a very positive development. But then we also discussed that the buffer zones that had been created during the border clashes, they were not removed or they weren't part of the talks that happened this year. So when we discussed, I remember you saying that we need to get clarity on the buffer zone. So in a way, we have again succumbed to this sort of salami slicing tactic that the Chinese employ.
Not like in the past. There has been a change. The
Right.
patrolling has begun. So we are seeing a difference, a change, but we're also seeing, and then we are seeing new reports emerge about how China is creating or building dams in the Brahmaputra, which is a very old story for us. The likes of us, we've been covering it for decades now.
Yeah.
That, there's a project that's coming up in the Brahmaputra. But the Chinese are very determined that they know exactly what they want to do in the region. And they are going to push. They are going to use this as leverage. And that leveraging will continue till the time there is recognition that China is a supreme power.
Right.
So this is a war of supremacy, battle for space, whatever you might call it. But Beijing under Xi Jinping is a very different Beijing today. and
Actually.
they're not going to sit quietly
Yeah,
as India engages the world,
hmm,
as India engages the West,
of course.
as India becomes almost indispensable in many conversations to do with uh, real geopolitics.
Right. Like even if even in other spheres, if we talk about, I think our engagements with China this year have made us realize that we can't compete with Beijing in
That's true.
a zero
Absolutely.
sum game, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
because
There should be that
hmm,
recognition.
right,
This whole chest thumping, saying we are better, we are greater, does not help. Look at the
understood.
realization post COVID.
Yeah,
You realized it. People threw their TVs away, and then everyone in the second phase was wearing a oxygen concentrator from China, made in China.
made in China. Yes,
And that's when you realize that throwing TVs away and saying we will ban Chinese products is not good enough unless and until you become the key to that supply chain.
exactly.
And we are still a long way off. I'm not saying we are not trying to get there.
So
I'm sure there's intent, but there's a lot of work to be done.
right,
And in the meanwhile, you think China is going to sit pretty and not do anything?
of course.
I'll give you an
So
example, Anna.
yeah,
There were these American diplomats who'd come and they were engaging in India, and there was this bilateral conversation. Then some of them also met us off the record. Some of the European diplomats, some American diplomats, all of them, they've been talking about how India is the next big story, and that we are the alternative, and that everybody's focused on it. I said, okay. But what are you doing to contain the Chinese supply chains or China's growth? Just take, for example, the energy sector and the electrical vehicles, the electric vehicles. I said, one, they control lithium.
yeah,
Okay. Secondly, no matter what, lithium will have to go through, you'll have to go through China to get those for your lithium batteries. Thirdly, please look at the Indian market today. For all the we will not buy Chinese products, how many BYD Chinese EVs are we seeing on the road? Fantastic looking vehicles.
of
I don't
course.
own one, but I own an EV,
Yeah,
and they're affordable. They're fantastic. Their performance is better. They have great mileage. So why will
all the
people not
things.
buy them?
Of
So
course, yeah.
instead of buying an Indian make, you're seeing a lot of Chinese electric vehicles on Indian roads. How did they come?
Right, yeah. They all
So you're
always
not
have an
competing.
alternative. Yeah.
You have to compete, but you cannot stop, because if you stop, they will stop so many other things that you need. This is not what you need. You can do without, but they need to send this.
Exactly, yeah.
But if you're not taking this, then they will stop a lot of things you need.
Right.
There has to be acknowledgement that you're not there, but you need to get there. Otherwise, this will continue.
Exactly, yeah. So do you see a scope for a reset in India-China relations at the highest level, or will this relationship actually go the other way where no
No, I
dialogues
with India,
between
China, you can never say. It's always going to be one-upmanship. It's always
ah,
going to be a phase of highs and lows and skepticism, yet having to meet, yet are we going to see the hug diplomacy.
yeah,
Anything can happen.
anything, yeah.
We used to say this
But
about India,
trade is going to
Pakistan,
flourish, huh?
and now we're saying this about India, China, because there was a time when we'd say anything can happen. They can suddenly meet, they'll suddenly hug, suddenly there'll be an attack, suddenly they'll stop talking, suddenly, a lot of things can happen. With India, Pakistan, now there's clarity that there's going to be no forward movement till, terrorism is not tackled,
Yeah.
right? And over here, there is a relationship of where India is a bigger power than Pakistan, so we can afford to not.
But
And
yeah,
they're in a very bad shape.
right.
But with India, China, it's the other way around. where China is a bigger power right now, and we need to see and balance things out. Dr. Jaishankar himself said, after all the ban, this ban, that, when people started asking him about how have imports quadrupled or doubled, then he had to accept and admit and say that, well, we can't do without China at this point in time. One has to be practical as a country. So, in being practical, you will have to engage. You cannot do what you did with Pakistan.
Actually, yeah.
And that's what we're doing. Because if not, and if you go all towards the West, then you see what happens in our borders, at our borders, or, over the Brahmaputra. So one has to be pragmatic and approach China very delicately, yet not with fear.
Yeah.
Because they also know that India is a very important and a big power.
Actually.
And they know that this is a very rare country that has good ties with Russia, who they're friends with Iran, with their entire nexus, and with the West.
Yeah.
So they also have to be careful.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so finally, as we're closing this episode, closing this year, my last question. Oh my God, okay. So we welcome the new year, but reflecting back, yes, this year was actually like we lost many influential personalities, including our ex-prime minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, and there's like lots that I read because at his time, of course, I was quite young and I didn't know much about. And all those, those are fed into your minds that, okay, you have to look a certain political figure with a certain lens. So I'm glad that this time, like when I read through, I could understand many different aspects that I didn't at that point of time. And considering, his tenure as the finance minister during
Governor, RBI, then finance minister.
Right,
then
yeah.
later.
Yes, later.
Prime Minister.
So, like we have talked so much. We have also mentioned the Nehru thing because this current government always disses on Nehru's policies and says, like you say, foreign policy works in the continuum. So I was listening to Neerja Chaudhary in one of the interviews, and she said it took 39 months to close that India-US nuclear deal. So not much is known about him and what he did during his tenure and how the foreign policy got shaped.
So, I do say that foreign policy is a continuum, but there are certain changes and shifts that have taken place because of radical decisions that have been taken by a few leaders here in India.
Yeah.
One of those radical decisions and a huge change for India, in fact, let me come to civil nuclear agreement later, was liberalization.
Yeah.
That happened under Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, and he was Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister, and that opened India up. India still is socialist in nature in terms of a welfare state, thinking for its country, but it had to open up a little. Being so highly protectionist was not helping India. Even now, we are blamed for being protectionist, but we need to be because we are not a developed country. We need to think for our underprivileged and the economically weaker sections. Having said that, that was a massive move. And from then on, you've seen him be called a yes minster kind of a leader, where he would always say yes to 10 Janpath, which is Sonia Gandhi and the political powers of Congress party as prime minister. But it was only on this one decision, that's the India-US civil nuclear agreement, where the left threatened to pull out. And 10 Janpath then said that, I think we should wait. And it was that moment he said, I will resign if this doesn't go through.
Oh.
He'd never offered to resign otherwise.
Yeah.
And so they stood with Manmohan Singh as a minority government, pulled through the nuclear agreement, which has been important. Of course, in the latter part, it didn't see much in terms of delivery on the ground because of the liability problems, so on and so forth. Those are things that have to be sorted out between the two countries. But going from the nuclear tests that happened, the isolation of India, to the world trusting India well enough to say, okay, you can use nuclear for energy purposes, to draw energy, and that was a long journey. So he is a man, according to him, he'd said once that history will judge him kindly.
Yeah.
In the past few days after his passing, what we've seen, how we've seen people react to his achievements more than focus on his failures, clearly shows that he is somebody who everybody respected and revered. One should not turn a blind eye in leadership positions to anything wrong happening under your nose or on your watch. That will be something that, people can still hold against him because of the corruption and scandals and so on and so forth, but can't take away from the fact that he was a simple man, a thinker, an economist, and understood foreign policy. And when you understand foreign policy from an economics prism, you're changing the fate of a country, which is what Dr. Manmohan Singh did.
Very true. Yes. Right. Glad we spoke of about him. And we are hoping, we are ending this year with, like you said in the beginning, we are ending this year with a hope. Don't know how much, probably, when you are closing this podcast next year, we'll get to assess what exactly panned out and how things that have happened is going to shape, the events further.
But we're just hoping that the next year is going to be, it should continue being eventful, but in a positive way. I'm just hoping that there'd be less deaths.
News is positive, you think so, Geeta?
I hope so. I hope so, that there'd be lesser deaths, that there'd be more humanity, that the suffering of people, the real causes, should be looked at not from anti this or anti that, but from a prism and perspective of justice and equality. So I just hope, that we have a better 2025.
Yeah. Yes, so on that note, we'll put an end to this conversation. And 115, we're signing off. I'm signing off. Sorry, not Geeta.
Signing off the year, though.
Signing off the year, yes. So keep writing to us, like I said, and keep sharing your love. And have a very happy new year. I hope you receive, Geeta, you also receive everything that you wish for. And just keep this podcast going. Yeah.
Keep the podcast going. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year. Bye.